Hello and welcome to the 12th and final episode of the Parent and I podcast for 2019. I'm Emma and this month I'm joined by our wonderful Parent and Education Manager, Shirley. How are you, Shirley?
I'm great, thank you, Emma.
Good. So it's the most wonderful time of the year, Shirley, isn't it?
Well, so they keep telling us,
So
Emma.
they tell us, but the reality is that Christmas comes with many pressures for families. And that can lead to a lot of difficulties. So we're going to spend a little bit of time in this episode looking at conflict and the ways that we can manage that.
Yeah.
So Shirley, conflict in the family's hard at any time.
Of course it is.
But over Christmas it can become a little bit more intensified and emotions are heightened. So what are some of the things that can cause conflict within families first of all?
Well, around the Christmas period, one of the main things that causes conflict is the fact that everybody's in quite a confined environment. They're probably together 24/7, which isn't their normal way of actually functioning as a family. So that in itself can bring some conflict. As well as that, there's people's expectations. Obviously, children and young people have a completely different expectation of what Christmas should be like compared to what parents and other elderly adults in the family would reckon it should be. I think, we're all fed this dream that everything should be wonderful and that everything should be sweetness and light and we should all be standing under a massive Christmas tree, all singing glorious songs together, but that isn't really the case.
No.
And in families, when people are thrown together, and maybe it's the only time of the year that they actually all do get together, they're seeing each other in a completely different light.
Definitely. And when you've got all the other stresses kind of going on, you're maybe preparing dinner, gifts, kids maybe fighting over who gets that toy, and maybe to share that or whatever. You can understand why things would be kind of tense in the household. So when things maybe do get a little bit stressful on the day, what ways can parents maybe manage some of that?
Well, I suppose we're famous here in Parenting NI for one thing that we're always encouraging parents to do, and that's to stay calm. Much easier said than actually done.
Yeah.
But once you do master that technique, it is something that you can go to, and that if you can keep calm, you'll find that the situation will actually diffuse much quicker. I think it's very much about, maybe delegating, taking some of that stress away from you as a parent. There are all those expectations of what people should be getting, what children want as gifts, and sometimes even between parents there can be a bit of conflict that arises there, and what their expectations, and that will go back normally to their own experience in their birth family of what Christmases were like. And if you come from very different backgrounds, where maybe in somebody's house it was a case of a very relaxed Christmas, and in the other house it was something that was quite hectic, when those two worlds collide, sometimes that can be a source of conflict in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so ways to kind of stay calm then. I maybe need some of these tips too. How can we maybe bring ourselves back down and keep ourselves sort of grounded on Christmas Day, in general conflict in general?
One of the main things is to remember to breathe. Sometimes we get caught into all that's going on and we go into that tirade of what we're actually saying, and we don't actually take time to fill our lungs with breath. So sometimes it's nearly about stepping out of the situation, because whenever we are able to do that, we can see things much more clearly and calmly. So it may well be that for you just need to go off somewhere and have a cup of coffee by yourself. Maybe you just need to go and walk around the garden. If you have a good friend, maybe you want to go for a walk somewhere, or maybe you just want to chill out in front of a rubbish TV programme and just leave the stresses and the tidying up to somebody else for a little while.
That sounds good. Just take a wee break, a wee breather, and take a bit of time for yourself.
And normally in families the conflict happens over very minute things. Somebody else is sitting in my seat, I always sit at the top of the table. That's not the way my mummy made the gravy. So it can be those tiny little things that cause the most conflict in families. But certainly there is the generational aspect of it, where particularly for young people and for teenagers, they probably want to spend the day with friends, and parents probably want them to be staying in the house having a nice family day with all the relations there who are coming to visit.
Yeah.
So for So in that case, it's very much about using negotiation and maybe reaching a level of compromise.
Yeah, because I was just thinking there when you're saying, particularly, I mean, I think about growing up even when you were, you know, a teenager and wanting to go out for New Year's Eve and things like that. So maybe if parents have young people in the house this Christmas, at any time when they're wanting to go out, what sort of kind of things can they be doing with the kids to maybe, as you say, put those boundaries in place?
Yeah. Well, maybe they could maybe negotiate with the children, and with the young people in particular, and maybe that's about sort of making a deal and coming to some compromise with them, that maybe if they stay, you know, there for dinner, well then they can have some friends over in the evening and they can go to their own room and watch something, a movie or something, or they can play on their games console or whatever. It's reaching a level of compromise. It's what works for your family, and it's not getting caught up on what works in somebody down the street's family. Your family's unique. You know the best way that it's going to work. But remember that Christmas is about everybody in the family. So it's very much, and also young people are very caring. And sometimes we don't give them credit for that. So sometimes giving them a chore, like, you know, can you look after Granny? Can you get Granda another cup of coffee there? Can you, you know, go and spend time with your younger sister, read her a storybook, or play with her there with her toys until I get dinner ready? And sometimes if we actually ask in the right way, we'll find that young people are very open to actually helping take some of that stress off us. And actually end up enjoying themselves into the bargain.
By giving them a wee bit of responsibility too. And that's a nice thing as well. That's a good wee tip. Just asking for help. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, but even if you just say to somebody, look, I need a bit of help here in the kitchen or whatever, and they will, and most of the time people are good and they'll be willing to help you out.
Absolutely. And I think if you have people coming to your home, or even the people who are in the home, it is about delegating those tasks. Everybody likes to feel that they've contributed in some way. And you know, sometimes when, I know certainly in my family, if somebody asks you to come along somewhere and you say, what can I bring? And they come back with a, well, you know, there's nothing really, I've it all sorted. But you still feel obliged that you want to contribute in some way. So you probably bring something that's really not practical, or that's not going to be eaten, or that they don't actually like. So it's much easier to actually say to somebody, could you make soup? You know, could you bring a dessert? You know, you're not asking somebody to make it. Plenty of good things that you can go into the shop and buy now. And also it's a wee bit about you know, stepping into other people's worlds, not expecting everybody to have the Christmas that you have in your head. You know, their ideas, as I say, will be different. So sometimes Christmas is a fantastic opportunity when families are together to maybe spend some quality time with your children, and with other relatives that maybe you're busy working the rest of the year and you don't actually have that time. We all know that feeling, Emma, of you know, it's January and I'm going to start, and next year I'm going to see so and so every fortnight, and then we get to March and we think, oh, what actually happened to that? I haven't actually got round to spending time with them, or to go and see my Aunt Joan or whatever it is. So, you know, it's about using that time so that it suits everybody best.
And remembering that kind of thing as well. I think everybody can get caught up in, as you say, the massive expectations of Christmas, whereas the reality is, it is just nice to sometimes spend time together, see friends as well that you maybe haven't seen in a while. But when you think about it, there's an awful lot of stress and an awful lot of kind of carrying on for just one day.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And you mentioned there about come January time, and you have all these, maybe you're enthused about your New Year's resolution or whatever. But at the same time, in January, if there is conflict going on in your home over Christmas, those things, even after the one day is over, they might still linger. So particularly thinking of people who may be struggling with their mental health, or maybe parents who are separated and maybe didn't get opportunity to spend time with their family. It can be difficult when you get to January and it's very long to the next paycheck and it's dark and dreary outside. You kind of still, it's hard to kind of look at the positives maybe sometimes. And so maybe if we look at that side of things now, What sort of things can we maybe be doing to look after ourselves better come the new year?
Well, January's a great time for us to actually make change. People feel very motivated, and whether you make a New Year's resolution or whether you just think in your mind, this year is going to be a better year than last year was. It's very much about starting off with a clean slate.
Okay.
So, if something has arisen over the Christmas period, if there has been conflict in the family, try and resolve it in some manner. Remember, things that were very different at Christmas, people being out of the routine, children being out of the routine of going to nursery or school. There's bound to have been incidents that happen where maybe their behaviour's been a bit more challenging. Maybe somebody else in the family has actually given you some advice on how you should be handling your children. But now that the Christmas period has actually settled, try and resolve that. It's not what you say sometimes, it's how you actually say it. So sometimes being able to heal wounds really, and maybe saying, I know you were trying to be helpful on Christmas Day when you said, but they're my children, and I'm the one who will decide how they're disciplined or whatever the issue will actually have been. And I really appreciate your input. But I'd really value your support if we could try things my way.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, we all have those ideas come January, as happens to me every year. Going to lose weight, going to have dry January. All those things that fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
But it is a starting point, and it's only natural because we have been caught up in the hype. And as you know yourself, Emma, it's getting earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Halloween finished this year, and the next thing people had trees up and lights up.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a reflection of mental health, and that people need that little bit of brightness. They need something to look forward to. But as you say, come January, a lot of us are down in the doldrums, and we may be affected by the weather, we may be affected by the daylight, and it's worth, if that's happening to you on a regular basis, maybe getting that checked out with your GP.
Okay, yeah.
But there are things that you can do for yourself. So maybe some of those things that we should be doing are to be easy on ourselves. We're doing a good enough job.
Yeah. And
sometimes that's fine, not to have those expectations where we have to be the perfect parent or we have to run the perfect family. Just we're ticking along and everything's going pretty much okay.
Yeah.
But some of those things we talked about earlier are still things that we can do in January. Meeting up with friends, having a bit of a chat, maybe making a plan for next year. If you find this year very stressful, as lots of families will be doing this year, particularly with a view to sort of finances and things, try and make some sort of plan for next year. Putting something, however small, away in a jar so that you can see it growing can sometimes give us a bit of peace of mind. That we actually think we're working towards something and that we're in control. And that's one of the things that we need to feel to actually help improve our mental health. But getting out and about, January's a lovely time to actually, if the kids are still off school, doing some of those silly things that children absolutely love to do and that maybe we don't take enough time to do as adults. So, putting their boots on, letting them jump in the puddle, jumping along in the puddle with them, going for nice walks, clearing your head in the fresh air, and remembering that breathing, and, the breath, counting to 10 before we actually jump into things.
Yeah, just taking a bit of time before you decide what you're going to do.
And if you do feel a bit down, if it's a significant level, as I say, it's worth just having a chat with somebody. But also remembering that it's quite normal to feel a bit like that after any sort of anticipation and celebration, that we come down to earth with a bit of a bang and that we can feel quite flat afterwards.
Yeah, there's a bit of a kind of coming down period. Yeah. No, that's a good reminder. It is good to be kind of reminded that, do you know what, every family can experience conflict.
Absolutely.
You're not unique, and everybody does feel a wee bit down from time to time, but it's maybe just how you manage it.
And you had mentioned there about maybe parents who are separated, and I think that one of the things to remember is that not every parent will have the opportunity to see their child over the Christmas period. Maybe that's been the biggest source of conflict over Christmas for them. But as you said, it's only one day, and that day doesn't have to be in the 25th of December. So if you're not seeing your child until a week, 10 days afterwards, have another Christmas. Do your celebration there, and tell your child that this is this is our day that we're going to be together, just as Christmas Day was when you spent with the other parent. This is our special day.
Yeah.
And other things that you can do whenever you're separated are maybe to just let your child know that you were thinking about them.
Mm-hmm.
So, even taking a couple of photographs of you, whenever you're watching telly or whenever you're with other family members, and saying, when we were having dinner, I was thinking about you, and I was thinking how lovely it would be, and how were you enjoying yourself and things like that. It's also an opportunity to start new traditions.
Yeah.
So it may well be that if this is the first year that you find yourself separated from your child, that this will be something that you'll want to put a new tradition in. So we always have a celebration exactly a week after Christmas Day, or whatever it may well be, or we take time before Christmas to actually make something, something to put on the tree, or maybe buns or something that you're going to do that becomes a wee tradition in your family. Or we go to a certain place, we go to a certain park, or maybe we, if our budgets allow us, we go to the cinema together, or something like that.
Yeah. That's great, Shirley. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and give some great tips.
And have a nice
for parents
Christmas.
there. Yes, absolutely. Whilst we were talking there, I was just thinking too that because it is such a heightened period for a lot of parents, and having the kids at home, everybody's off work, all the kids are off school too, and it kind of does get a bit tense and you get a bit of cabin fever sometimes. Parents, you might be thinking we could do with a little bit of support as well in the new year. It's worth noting that Shirley, you're a parent education manager, so you'll be able to talk to us a wee bit about this, but we will have a lot of programmes running in the new year as well. They're starting in January. We've got a new load of parent in your team programmes.
Yes, we have indeed. We have a whole stack coming out right across all the trust areas in Northern Ireland, and they'll be starting mid to late January.
Yeah.
And if that's something that would be of interest to you, and particularly if you find yourself in that conflict situation with your young person, come along. It's a fantastic programme. Conflict in the family is one of the issues that's dealt with in the programme, and you'll find it really beneficial. We also have Walking on Eggshells programmes, which are programmes that are specifically designed to help parents who are experiencing a level of violence from their child or young person, or very manipulative behaviour, and again they'll be starting at the end of January. We also have parenting challenge and behaviour programmes, we have keeping your cool programmes, parent apart programmes. There's lots of things, and you can find all the details on our website.
Yes, absolutely. So be sure to go and check that out. It's www.parentingni.org. So all that's left to say is a very Merry Christmas to you. We hope you enjoy your break as much as you can do, and take care of yourselves. We will be back in the new year with new episodes of the Parenting NI podcast, and lots of new topics and different things to get into discussion with. So thank you again, Shirley.
Not all. Thank you, Emma.
Okay, all the best. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.